Wind. This house has been far out at sea all night. The woods crashing through darkness, the booming hills, winds stampeding the fields under the window, floundering black astride and blinding wet, till day rose. Then under an orange sky the hills had new places, and wind wielded blade light, luminous black and emerald, flexing like the lens of a mad eye. At noon I scaled along the house side as far as the coal house door. I dared once to look up. Through the brunt wind that dented the balls of my eyes, the tent of the hills drummed and strained its guy rope. The fields quivering, the skyline a grimace, at any second to bang and vanish with a flap. The wind flung a magpie away, and a black-backed gull bent like an iron bar slowly. The house rang like some fine green goblet in the note that any second would shatter it. Now deep in chairs, in front of the great fire, we grip our hearts and cannot entertain book, thought, or each other. We watch the fire blazing and feel the roots of the house move, but sit on, seeing the window tremble to come in, hearing the stones cry out under the horizons. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to my channel. That was arguably my absolute favorite poem from this collection, The Hawk in the Rain by Ted Hughes. This was the November collection of the month that Aaron Facer and I were reading together. We started about mid-month and just finished it yesterday. And I had a blast reading through this. I had never been introduced to Ted Hughes before it. And Aaron had mentioned it. He was his favorite poet. So I said, we should start with that if you'd like. And so he offered this as one of the options. This is Ted Hughes' very first collection. And one of the comments I made in our Voxer chat back and forth was that I feel intimidation after reading this. If this was his first collection, and don't get me wrong, not all of them in here are great. The middle of it definitely kind of tapers off a little bit, and even the ending, unless you like war-themed poetry, is going to fall flat for you as well. But by and large, there are some really good poems in here. And so it sets a bar almost for what a first volume of poetry. I mean, this is only a very slim volume. We've got a total of 54 pages in here. To try to match that level of poetry would be absolutely intimidating for somebody, because this is well done overall. I thoroughly enjoyed this. For those keeping count, this is one of the books I'm counting as my 100 book challenge. I finished a book. I was in the middle of it before the challenge was announced, but I'm counting it because I finished a book that I own, that I owned prior to the announcement of that challenge. And I enjoyed this. Yeah, it's, if you have a chance to pick this up and check it out yourself, you certainly should. This is going to stay on my shelf because I'm happy to revisit some of the poems in here because they stood out to me. They were really magnificent. Some of the poems in there, Aaron said that he's encountered in some of the collections of Ted Hughes' poetry, but they had never read this collection himself. And I think Wind was one of his favorites too, prior to picking up this collection. I had a lot to say about Wind, along with the other two poems that we read that same day. And it was really good. So if you're looking at the calendar saying, well, David, you guys are done, there's still more November to go. Fear not, we have a solution for those that would like to join along. This is something that undoubtedly you can find a PDF version of some sort online and be able to read along. So we are turning to Percy Bysshe Shelley and looking at his prose in particular, because there is a relatively long essay he wrote, A Defense of Poetry. It's about 30 pages long in this, and we're going to read about 4, 5, 6 pages a day and talk about it in our Voxer. And if you would like in on that, or on any of the poetry collections, or if you just want to be in there to hear us talk about the poetry and maybe read some of the poetry, then let me know. I'd be happy to add you to create a poetry club Voxer chat and have all of our discussion in there. Right now, it's just the two of us chatting on Voxer, but I'd love to have more people included and involved. So if you're interested at all, A Defense of Poetry, I've read it. It's been probably 10 or 11 years now, and I'm excited to revisit it because I remember when I first fell in love with the Romantics, I read so much of what they wrote. And that was one of the things. I read that as well as the preface to Lyrical Ballads as part of my reading of the major Romantics poets back in that time. Speaking of Lyrical Ballads, that is our December poetry collection that we're going to be reading. So I've taken a little more look at this. So this is the 1798 version that I have in my hand. Now, he re-released this in 1800 as well as 1802. And it was in 1800 and 1802 that he added the lengthy and famous preface to the Lyrical Ballads, which thankfully, so in addition to having a big chunk of commentary, my collection does have that preface in the appendix to the Lyrical Ballads. So I'll be able to read that. And that's probably how we'll start our month, is by reading the preface to the Lyrical Ballads across a day or two. And then jump into the collection, which starts, at least in my version, with Rime of the Ancient Mariner. And so I told Aaron when he gets his hands on his copy, he's going to be borrowing it from his sister, to let me know the table of contents in that. And we'll compare and contrast. And whichever one has the longer table of contents, we'll go with that. Because undoubtedly, you can find all of the poems online that are missing in there. But I mean, it's got a goodly table of contents that we'll be reading through. Maybe not quite to a poem a day, which will help when we have things like Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Between preface and Rime of the Ancient Mariner, we probably can kiss our first week goodbye to just those two things, and they're going to be wonderful to read through and enjoy. And then it might be at a slightly less aggressive pace on reading through the rest of the collection after that. But I'm really, really excited to dive into Lyrical Ballads and read it front to back and see all of the poems that are in there and to enjoy this collection. And so the last thing I wanted to mention is that Aaron has made our January selection. And so I'm super excited about that. So we're going from Shelley to Wordsworth and Coleridge in December. And then from there, we're going to go to John Keats in January. And I'm so excited to go into John Keats. And so the collection that Aaron is choosing is Lamia Isabella, which I believe he's got in part of his, I'm assuming, a complete collection of poems, but he has it nicely circled there, what all's contained in there. And it's got a longer poem of Lamia. It's got Isabella, which is apparently a story from Boccaccio. So I'm going to want to read that story out of Boccaccio to kind of pair with that. But it's got some of the odes in there. Ode to a Nightingale, Ode to on a Grecian Urn, Ode on Melancholy. Those are all really, really fantastic poems. And then it concludes with Hyperion, books 1, 2, and 3. So I'm beyond excited to dive into that. And so I hope you're doing well. I look forward to your contributions to Poetry Thursday. It brings me so much joy to see those videos all popping up. And I look forward to seeing, Aaron, what you're going to be doing for Poetry Thursday with your video, which poem you might be reading, and if you talk about your thoughts on the Ted Hughes collection as well. And next week, I imagine we'll talk about the Shelley essay that we'll both have read by that point in time and be able to share our complete thoughts on that. So Hope you're doing well, BookTube. Thank you and have a great day.